wonderful youngsters, and we've got brilliant grandchildren as nicely. We still live collectively, however you realize he has his personal life, and I even have mine. At 92, Petula Clark drops a devastating confession, approximately the fee of stardom. The downtown singer held onto secrets for many years. Harassment via powerful producers, loss of life threats over a political message, and the truth about her marriage to Claude Wolfe. Now she's telling all, which includes what certainly took place in that lodge room with Elvis Presley. Petula Clark's tale starts off foul, with a call that wasn't even hers initially. She was born Sally Alwyn Clark on November 15, 1932, in Ewell, Surrey. But her father, Leslie, had different ideas. He mixed the names of two of his ex-girlfriends, Pet and Ula, and came up with Petula. Her mom wasn't pleased, but the name stuck. Just like that, her life already had a twist earlier than it had even started. She didn't have the kind of childhood where you stay in a single region and grow up with the same buddies. While her mother and father labored as nurses, she spent a whole lot of time in Wales together with her grandparents in a small mining town known as Abercynaid. Later, while the conflict started, the Owen family stored shifting, looking to live secure from the bombings. That steady trade shaped her. She picked up accents, learned to evolve, and, without knowing it, turned into building the competencies that might make her a performer. Her first time making a song in public was nearly too best to be real. She changed into just 7 years old status in a crowded pub, surrounded with the aid of Welsh miners. The air turned into thick with smoke, the voices loud, but the second she opened her mouth to sing, the room went quiet. It turned into a tiny glimpse of what changed into her turn. But the actual turning point got here in 1242. She changed into 9 years vintage while she and her father went to London's underground Criterion Theatre to report a message for her uncle, who becomes stationed in North Africa. It turned into speculated to be a simple radio broadcast, part of a BBC display known as It's All Yours. Then, within the middle of the whole lot, the air raid sirens went off. Explosions rumbled above as human beings in the refuge grew tense. The display's manufacturer wanted a distraction. He asked if anybody desired to carry out. Petula raised her hand. At first she desired to do an affect of a well-known comedian, but her father nudged her toward making a song. She stepped onto a field to reach the microphone and started out to sing Mighty Lek a Rose. Her voice became clean and consistent, reducing through the worry inside the room. As she sang, the orchestra joined in, and for some moments, the war out of doors failed to exist. That one overall performance changed the entirety. When the printed aired, the BBC became flooded with letters from listeners who desired to hear greater from this little woman with the angelic voice. Just like that, she became a regular at the radio. Over the following 3 years, she performed masses of times, her voice turning into a source of comfort for a kingdom at conflict. By 11, she became being called Britain's Shirley Temple. It wasn't pretty much her expertise. It was the manner she made human sense. She should mimic famous singers like Vera Lynn and Sophie Tucker, making audiences snigger 1 second and bringing them to tears the following. Soldiers took her photograph with them into conflict. To them, she was greater than a singer. She became a symbol of the entirety they had been combating for. Her performances weren't simply in grand theaters. She sang in bomb shelters, hospitals, and military camps. By 12, she had done over 500 indicades for the troops. Then came the moment that sealed her place in history. In 1945, as the war in Europe ended, a large celebration turned into held in Trafalgar Square. Thousands of people gathered, cheering, crying, and embracing. And right in the middle of it all, Petula Clark stood and sang. The girl who had spent the battle lifting spirits was now part of the state's victory. Petula Clark's rise to fame wasn't planned. It passed off with the aid of threat while she became simply 12. She was making a song for British troops at the Royal Albert Hall whilst director Maurice Elvey heard her. He became so impressed that he forged her in Medal for the General 1944, despite the fact that she had in no way acted before. Just like that, she became Britain's Shirley Temple, an infant superstar with an effective voice and a herbal display screen presence. In the 5 years that observed, she regarded in 17 movies. One of the most sizable became I Know Where I'm Going, 1945, directed by the legendary Michael Powell and Emmerich. She became most effective 13, but she stood out even among experienced actors. By 16, she had already carried out for Winston Churchill, King George VI, and Field Marshal Bernard Montgomery. People started out calling her the singing sweetheart, a call that perfectly captured her developing stardom. Despite her movie fulfillment, it was music that could define her career. She recorded The Little Shoemaker, though at the start she did not even need to. She notioned the song was too infantile for her evolving picture, but her manager convinced her, and it became out to be the proper circulate. The music climbed to Variety 7 on the United Kingdom charts, and shocked anyone whilst it reached primary in Australia. That made Clark the primary British female artist to ever pinnacle the Australian charts, something exceptional at the time. What made the tune even extra groundbreaking became how some distance it spread. She recorded it in English, French, German, and Italian, an ambitious pass in an era when maximum artists caught to one language. The effect changed into huge. By the stop of 1954, she had achieved for a document-breaking crowd of 1,240,000 humans at the exhibition ground in Newcastle, Australia, the most important audience for any performer in the USA. As much as that point, her multilingual profession did not forestall there. Incredibly, she recorded her first French music, Prends mon cœur, 1957, without speaking a word of the language. She found out it phonetically, memorizing the sounds without knowing what they meant. Still, her performance changed into so convincing that the tune reached the French top 10. By 1962, she had mastered the language, well sufficient to win the prestigious Grand Prix de Disque Français for Chariot. That same year, she had simultaneous hit facts in 3 languages, Chariot in French, Monsieur in German, and Romeo in English. No different artist had ever pulled that off. Clark didn't just translate her songs, she recorded completely different tracks for each marketplace. She sang in Italian, Spanish, and even Japanese, treating each language as a new inventive task. By the mid-60s, her French hit, Ya Twist, had sold over 1 million copies in France alone. In 1964, Tony Hatch came to Petit Leclerc with a track known as Downtown. He believed it is able to be a success, however Clark wasn't so certain. She thought the lyrics had been too easy, no longer desirable to her fashion. Hatch wouldn't surrender. He'd become satisfied the music had something unique. Eventually, Clark agreed to report it. On October 16, 1964, at Pi Studios in London, the session started out, and the whole lot started out going incorrect. The electricity started slicing out, forcing delays. The frustration in the room became rising fast. At one point, Clark became so bored stiff she nearly walked out, satisfied the music became cursed. However, they pressed on, decided to complete. Just minutes earlier than the studio closed, they were given the very last take. On November 16, 1964, Downtown turned into launch in 4 nations on the same time. Something nearly exceptional returned then. In the US, it debuted on the Billboard Hot 100 at number 87. That became a promising start, but what occurred subsequent becomes shocking. It also impacted her children. Clark has spoken brazenly about the guilt she carries as a mother. She desired to be the whole thing straight away, a loving figure, a dedicated wife, and a hit performer. That meant tough selections. When she had indicates in Las Vegas, she would depart her domestic in Geneva, Switzerland on the last viable moment, seeking to spend every extra second along with her children. But that left her exhausted. She might arrive inside the US with slightly any time to alter before stepping on stage. After appearing, in place of networking or relaxing, she could take the primary flight return to Geneva. This schedule drained her, and through the years she found out each her family and her work had suffered. I assume both my performances and my own family suffered, she admitted. As her children reassure her that she became a good mom, the guilt lingers. I do still sense guilty about not being the appropriate mom and probably constantly will. Petula Clark's career is packed with achievements. However, one of the maximum not noted is her paintings as a songwriter. In 1998, she was inducted into the Songwriters Hall of Fame, no longer simply as a performer, however, as a composer in her personal right. Many fanatics may not recognize that Clark wrote numerous songs during her career, including an anti-battle duet with Harry Belafonte. That performance became bold, controversial, and manner in advance of its time. Her fulfillment wasn't simply restricted to writing or singing. Clark became one of the quality-selling artists within the international. In 1966, she received the MIDEM Award for Most Income in Europe through a European artist. The following year, she gained once more, this time for having the best worldwide income by any lady artist. In 1968, she earned a Golden Globe nomination for Best Actress in a Musical for Finian's Rainbow, status alongside a number of Hollywood's largest names. On Level, she became just as wonderful. She received BAFTA nominations for her roles in The Sound of Music, Blood Brothers, Sunset Boulevard, and Mary Poppins. Few artists can dominate both music and theater, however Clark did it. Effects.